Truth, logic, action, power. It's the GreggHoush Show here on New Revolutionary Radio. From the Leonard School in Malden, Massachusetts, Gregg and company are here to bring a sense of ethics to your news. Whether it's politics, activism, or current events, we always seek to inform and never to deceive. Let's start the show.
All right, everybody. Welcome to episode 22.
Deuces up.
Sitting here with the wonderful
Yay! That's
Kayla
me.
Avery.
That's me. I am
our
very wonderful.
co-host.
Ask me.
Okay. It's fine.
And Mac.
The Mac Daddy.
Mac Daddy.
It's the Mac and Mac. He's the
Macaholics
Big Mac. He's a
Anonymous.
Mac burger of Mactitiousness.
Mac Daddy and cheese.
He's
And,
spectacular.
Spectacular.
That's a new one. That's a new one. That's out of nowhere.
Evolution, buddy.
I actually started
Sounds like
writing
some
down.
kind of gynecological thing. I'm not a fan of that.
No, it's not
And,
test-macular. But I've been writing down all my Mac puns, so I have like a 2-page long Mac pun now.
Also joining us tonight is Derek with
It's
the
the-
infectious laugh over there.
It's the D-Dog.
Yeah,
The
D-Dog. It's pretty,
D-Dog.
it's pretty simple, though.
He's
All
in a
right.
camp counselor outfit right
I
now.
will say my domain monster search history right now is filled with those Mac requests as well, though. So I have been macrequest.com and things like that. So
Oh my God,
no luck.
I think
So-
we should get like his domain, and I'm just gonna I don't know, I'm gonna build your website. I'm gonna build your brand for you, Mac.
Nice.
Just get him a desk that's shaped like one of those Mac trucks. I'm just saying, maybe IKEA sells them like the kids. It's like it turns into a bed. We could turn his
Or
desk
we
into
can
one
get
of
like
these.
one of those Tonka trucks and get his face on the front of it, like the what's that? The train.
Chon-
the
The
tank.
Thomas the
Yes.
Tank Engine.
What's this?
Guys, this episode is
It's already off
is
the
already
rails.
lit. It's
Off
lit.
the
It is.
rails
It
with
is.
Thomas the
On
Tank
fleek.
Engine.
Yeah.
It's only going downhill from here once we get to the
Yes.
real
Just
stories.
like America, guys.
So this episode is actually going to be short because not much happened this week.
Oh yeah. What can we even
I
talk
just
about?
want that to be true once. I
Right?
want to be able to
A few
say
moves
that
once,
and
I mean.
not laugh. Instead, we
Or
had,
I want to
of
not get
course,
15 different breaking news notifications in an
Right.
hour.
I
my
know.
God.
Like we have Trump's
Breaking
Arizona
news.
rally. We have North Korea with ICBMs, and we have the
the
government
saddest
getting
part-
shut down with the wall.
And the saddest part about like everything that's happened, it's like North Korea is probably like I don't think I've heard it in my news feed until I saw it on the notes. Like that's how fucked up everything is right now. Like I can't even get like some of the most important news.
I have lots of reasons to be upset by the news from North Korea that's come out in the last couple
Yeah.
days, but mostly, we can start with that one. I mean, there's probably a lot of other people that haven't even heard this one yet. Then there's Derek Black starting to make the rounds, which is great. There's the Afghan speech. There's the Boston free speech rally, which was drowned out by 40,000 counter protesters.
No, the free speech rally happened. We just had
I said drowned out by 40,000.
who exercised their free speech to
I
tell
think
Nazis
really
to go
the
fuck themselves.
40,000 of us were the free speech rally.
There were like 2 Nazis out of the 50 people that were actually over there, though.
And then there was 2 Klansmen on top of the 2 Nazis,
Right,
and then
right.
Shiva.
Exactly. So it was like not 50 Nazis. It was like 50 pick which bad group those 2 are from.
Oh yeah,
Like
no.
it was just like
Grab bag
it was
and
like
jerk
20
offs.
different bad groups of
yeah,
people.
it was like
but
it was like
they
a
weren't all
gumbo
Nazis.
jalaya of
just
bad.
the like 40 that weren't Nazis were okay with the Nazis being there, which is just as bad.
And then you had like the people
No,
that
they
show,
were totally upset because the Nazis would make them look bad.
and then you've got the other people
Yes.
that just wanted to like be on like that, like the Nazi side, just be like the liberal media, like
Yeah.
they don't know what we're about.
And the kids that got called out for it, and then were like taking their outfits off, their white polos and khaki shorts, and then like running.
We
And
should
then-
at this point really build out the domain liberalmedia.co because I own that. Like
Yeah, that's
I
great.
actually
Why don't
got
we
that when
have that?
.co happened, and
Yeah, we should do
we
something
haven't
with
done
that.
anything with that. But like
Oh my
that's
God.
like I own liberalmedia.co. Let's do
Well,
something
that's
with
gonna
that.
be my project tomorrow. I'm gonna come
There you
here.
go.
We're gonna do something.
Let's do this. Let's do this. So let's start with North Korea because, good old Michael Ellsman is like out there just telling the world all of the dirty secrets.
And
Yeah,
like,
Like
much.
where the ICBM engine technology came from and where the actual engines they got came from.
I mean,
and
technically, he didn't say that. He just suggested some very likely possibilities and pointed out that Well,
And
this
showed it on a
variant-
map.
He said, this variant of the engine was developed at this one place.
The RD250.
Yes, it was a specific version of the single chamber version
the
of
single
the
chamber version of the RG250. Yeah.
was developed at the specific.
RT Duty?
Yes,
I
oh,
that's
can't talk
different.
today.
Yuzmash.
I just totally fucked up that joke, and I like, oh,
Yuzmash.
no, it's wrong. I
So-
got like,
So what we know is that Russia decided they wanted all their missile tech internal to the country, and they didn't want to keep outsourcing a lot of their, honestly, a lot of their military tech to areas that were basically former USSR nations,
back
like
in the USSR. Sorry.
like
it's the
the
only thing I
Ukraine.
think of.
And in the Ukraine, there were multiple groups of people and companies that were related to the ICBM technology, from the designers and the programmers and all the tech people to the actual engineers who built them in the factories that made these parts. And Russia stopped needing them well over a decade ago and stopped using them, which we've learned in this world. If you leave a group of people with a specific military skill set of very protected technology out in the wild, and you take away their source of income, that is the largest proliferation risk we have. And so Russia leaves a bunch of scientists and engineers with all of this ICBM knowledge and spare parts and completed engines sitting on trucks, just kind of over there in the Ukraine, and we don't need you anymore, and we're not going to pay you anymore. And somehow, a few years later, the North Koreans have this tech. And some of these Ukrainians now live in North Korea for some reason. Maybe they were just vacationing and got, I don't know, stuck.
Also, North Korea now has the ability to kind of manufacture these engines, even though they couldn't possibly have reverse engineered the technology in the period since they first got a hold
so
of
Russia left a whole bunch of scientists with the parts and all the things they needed to do this, and then turned their back and said, "We don't need you anymore, wink."
And then all of those people ended up in North Korea with parts and
this is
knowledge.
such a weird coincidence.
Also, there's a Russian company, Energomesh, who deal with missiles, and they also had these RD-250 engines, a bunch of them in storage, possibly including the single chamber variant. No one's entirely sure. And for all anyone knows, that may have been where North Korea actually got the actual physical copies.
Yeah, we know where they got the engineering talent. That comes from the
There's
Ukraine.
only one option there.
But the actual just here is an engine that we had delivered, that was definitely
well, it had to have
from
been
either
either
one of
Russia or
them.
China. Like, there's only two. Those are the only two countries that like talk to North Korea.
The thing is,
Sure.
Ukraine had the facilities where these engines were produced, designed, built. Russia had a bunch of these engines sitting around in storage, also builds a variant of these engines. Like, it could have come from Ukraine, it could have come from Russia. Like, there are some people around, there's a few facilities, and we don't really know where the physical engines came from.
But we know it's probably one of these two places, being the
So we
the
gotta
We know
variant.
that one of them is the one that
So
designed
there's
them.
literally
Yeah.
a 50-50 shot at guessing the right answer here.
Yeah, of where the actual engine itself came from, but the people who know how to use it, who know how to engineer more of them, and know how to take that technology and turn it into reproducible technology where they can actually make their own, they all came from the Ukraine, and they were just kind of left out there, thanks to Russia no longer needing their services.
Oh, I think they sold them.
Well, that I'm just saying, like that's specifically, how that went.
Company Yuzmash is actually run by Ukrainian government.
Yeah.
It's specifically owned by the company, the country. So
Yeah.
Russia didn't have that level of it. Well, they might have at that time.
At
No,
that
I meant
time,
like they
it was-
probably
it was-
sold these
It
actual
was when
like scientists
Manafort was
to
over
North
there
Korea.
hanging out having fun.
Yeah, no, I mean, Ukraine did kind of have a certain pro-Putin dictator in power right up
indeed.
until about that point.
Yeah. So
that is
there's
actually a possibility.
possibilities, but well, we know now, and it's a thing that everyone thinking about this should already have known, is that the biggest threat to proliferation is leaving someone with that level of skill, with that level of machinery, and with actually existing, military grade whatever, with no money, no source of income, cutting them off from, their biggest contracts. what do you think they're going to do? They're going to fill that void. They're going to find a way.
Of course, and they're going to try to do something that's, taking advantage of their very profitable skill set. Because
North
why would you
Korea
not?
certainly wanted all of that. And that's the type of place that you end up with. I mean, I don't think that's, like the nuclear stuff that happened with Imran Khan going to like Pakistan and India and whatnot, like that's a whole different story. But like this specifically is the biggest threat of actual proliferation, is leaving people wanting for money who have the skill set. Simple as that. And so there we go. Now North Korea has, good working ICBM engines.
Well,
Now, they can't.
I mean, we have better ones, but
Yeah, I know.
But also,
what
like,
really matters at that
I'm
point?
like not really that afraid of North Korea right now, knowing that like we're gonna die in a civil war first. So
Yeah, sure.
Also true.
you know
Well,
what I mean? Like
speaking of that threat, so let me ask something. This is kind of a rookie nuclear question that I don't know. I
you
know
always have that one rookie question. Don't worry, we're all
God knows
It's
rookie
allowed.
questions coming from this side of the field for damn sure. So this nuclear one, I'm hoping somebody else actually is wondering this one. But I'm thinking the nuclear technology has changed a lot. They talk intercontinental, and they talk about the ability to actually hit U.S. territories. And what is there, literally like 2 or 3 that they can actually get to the U.S., they believe? My question is two-part. Number one, how do they know, how far those nukes can get, how far they can travel? Number two is, how do they not know for sure? Like, because I hear them saying they may be able to hit the West Coast, and may be able to do this, if not now, very soon. I heard things like that recently. How do they?
Well, a lot of it
Take it away,
is
Mac.
based off of they know essentially they can look at the engine design, any pictures that are released, any intelligence information they gather on it, and from just knowing some basic details about the engines themselves, they basically know the general performance envelope of the engine. And then they can make an estimate based off of the size of the missile and knowing, the U.S. knows how to make these missiles. So we have a pretty good idea of what the design process looks
So
like.
if they've enriched already, they've already gone through that. Then at that point, the technology of the missile that actually drives it, that flies it, the fuel or vehicle for it, I guess, that's actually what's changing there.
Yeah, the entire ability to deliver a missile or warhead specifically to the U.S. or wherever they want to deliver that is all about the rocket platform, essentially.
Okay.
It doesn't really matter.
You could take a bomb in a suitcase. It doesn't matter really, how it gets there. But for this specifically, they need the intercontinental ballistic missile technology to get it from where they are to where we are at speed and accurately.
Okay, there's an offshoot question that may just be the wrong question to ask now, but it's interesting, so I'll ask anyway, is the laser. What is the ability of that laser, does anybody know, to actually deactivate a missile that's in range, for instance? Is that something they can do?
We have done some testing with using lasers to intercept missiles. Actually, a lot of it was done on satellites whose orbits were deteriorating.
And it is largely defensive, right? The laser,
Yeah,
that's largely...
it is defensive. It is not a particularly powerful...
That specific
Yes,
laser
yes.
is
Yeah,
defensive.
right.
We have
We're
mounted
working on ones that
we have mounted offensive lasers now on Navy ships. So
Can you imagine the ones that we don't even know about, though?
the laser cats are a little temperamental. They're hard to control and they scratch. So I don't know.
So we do have a little bit of defense. What's interesting there is more testing and actual outright usage has been done by the Chinese, who out of nowhere, without the U.S. government knowing it was happening just a few years ago, decided to take out a satellite in geostationary orbit
just to demonstrate it.
just to say, hey, look, we can blow up your satellites whenever we choose. And they did it in a way which put a lot of debris around where a lot of other satellites would be going that was slightly problematic. But they proved that they've got that kind of laser tech, which is interesting.
Yeah, the big problem with taking out a missile in flight is essentially the only... you have a
guidance.
Well,
is a problem.
The hardest part is that basically once the missile hits the exoatmospheric stage, it's moving so fast that trying to get any kind of intercept solution is very nearly a lost cause.
Okay.
And depending on what type of actually delivery mechanism they have on their last stage, we have ICBMs here in America that when they get to the point where they're actually dropping the bombs on the country that is their target, 12 will actually leave the intercontinental ballistic missile with different targets.
Yeah, it's what's called a multiple independent reentry vehicle warhead.
Okay.
Yeah, so you have one of those
Catchy
going,
title.
and you might, let's say you in a miracle get 8 of them. What does that matter? 4 of them hit.
Yeah, one missile was fired and 4 cities got nuked.
Yeah, like so. It's still scary. The thing is the other reason they were so questioning, was the stability of their platform. Like, a lot of their missiles had blown up relatively early in flight, and so the could it reach wasn't even necessarily based on the technical design, and that we knew that technical design would hit America just fine, but would their copy of that technical design make it here? How good was their tech?
And with how fast technology obviously scaling nowadays, we don't stop talking about it, but in weaponry, just like anywhere else it's happening, it's a lot of these countries that have less money, they're going to have more access. How much NATO approval do they need? United Nations approval do they need? What do they need to have in place for approval from, I guess, the world if they're trying to upgrade these weapon systems?
Nothing. They don't care.
Wow.
Nothing. It's
There's nothing anyone can do about that.
Yeah,
Wow.
I mean, so there are non-proliferation treaties in place, but what those actually are is between the bigger countries agreeing that we aren't going to allow the smaller countries to do this. We don't want anyone else having nukes, things like that, right? So what ends up happening is the only real power the already nuclear countries have is really UN sanctions against these people. And in America, we have extra, sanctions that we can pull because a lot of the banking system, the use of the dollar is a foundation of a lot of transactions. But even with that, all you've got to stop them from getting some of this, much more powerful weaponry is sanctions, which we've seen with North Korea. They don't care about.
I mean, you can do some stuff to try and hinder their development of a nuclear capability in and of itself, but trying to stop development of the ICBMs is very nearly impossible. Most of the testing is ground-based test beds to make sure that the engines and control systems are working properly, and you're never even gonna see those.
Yeah.
They're in an underground facility somewhere that's designed to channel the rocket's exhaust to somewhere safe.
And with those technologies and the weapons, they're just getting better, they're getting faster, they're getting stronger, they're getting smarter, but
They
they're
actually
getting
haven't developed a huge amount in several decades. There've been
Well, the
some
ICBM
advancements.
tech hasn't specifically, but a
Yes,
lot of
yeah.
other tech has.
Yeah, there's
what
been a
about
lot
price,
of weapons that
though?
has,
So
but-
is price dropping as fast as it normally
Not
is
really.
in other
No,
areas, or no?
actually,
ICBMs
ICBMs and rockets are such a specialty item and such a large-scale project that only a few countries really engage in that it hasn't really seen.
Like our intercepting missiles, like the Patriots and things like that, are still nearly $1 million a missile.
Yeah, and that's literally just a missile designed to hit other missiles.
Okay, so this is how is that the case? Everything in the world is just so much cheaper, better, faster, stronger, smarter. But I mean, I can obviously there's obviously the cynical way of looking at it. Obviously,
Well, of
lobbyists.
course,
a lot
the
of
military-industrial complex,
Of
sure, they
course.
want their money, and there's inbuilt inefficiencies in that. But the other thing that you've got to take into account is, so your laptop has come down in price tenfold in the last 20 years, right? And missile tech has not. The ability to build the laptop, of course, has, thanks to Moore's law and other things, you can get it faster, smaller, and all that. So it's dropped the price a little. But, the safety of your laptop versus the safety measures needed via regulation and just, outright actually safety precautions for military tech are a world of difference. If your laptop catches fire, well, shit
sucks.
happens, and you end up with the Note recall from Samsung and a few people with, burned legs and other bodily parts near those legs, but whatever, right?
A couple washing
They
machines
sue.
too, right now. Yeah.
But you have a battery of Patriot missiles do the same thing, and that's a whole different ball game. So they the inbuilt price has a lot to do with the safety built into these things and the restrictions on use and all the other stuff they have to build in to make them even remotely safe.
Also, just the building rocket engines of that size or larger requires a lot of very high precision work. It's not as easy as doing high precision work in silicon like you would with a computer. It requires a lot of technical skill, advanced materials, all kinds of stuff, and it's just such a specialty thing that it hasn't developed the economies of scale the way computers have.
So I'm just cynical to think it's just like a monopoly because it's obviously a bidding monopoly.
It's not.
that only
There's some
two
of that,
people
absolutely.
ever-
There's some of that
I mean,
built in,
there's-
but
Okay.
Yeah, there's absolutely the military-industrial complex taking a large cut, mostly because there isn't that much competition.
yeah, I mean,
But there is competition between different
people like
manufacturers.
Boeing, people like Lockheed, especially like their Skunk Works, all these people,
Raytheon.
their biggest enemy today right now is Elon Musk.
Yeah, pretty much.
Absolutely.
His rocket platforms and like Blue Origin with Jeff Bezos and whatnot. They are really mad at how cheap he's doing the work he's doing.
Yeah, but he hasn't been successful yet.
Falcon
He hasn't
Heavy
he hasn't gone into space.
many times.
Yeah.
He's like blown up like 15 times, and
No,
like he's got a
just-
whole
just the
like,
first
No.
two, I
he's got a
think.
whole town like under hostage.
None of that's even remotely true.
Yeah, there's the Texas
He
town
has-
that
he has
And
actually
he kidnapped
launched
a country in Europe. I'm sorry, that was not.
No,
he's
there's
literally launched multiple, including Falcon Heavies that have now gone all the way up to space with cargo that has then launched itself and delivered itself to the ISS. His rockets have already come all the way back down and landed on their own, something no one else
in
had
the
ever
worst
done,
landing spots,
and been
too.
reused to go back up and deliver more cargo.
On
He's already
water,
well past what you're
at an
talking about. What you're
angle,
talking about
like-
is 4 years ago.
Yeah, it's the last time I read about him.
Okay,
Yeah,
well,
very recently, they've actually had a fair
they've
bit of
made all the
success.
breakthroughs they
enough,
needed to
yeah.
make.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
And
like
so-
but the
Maybe not
technology.
all of them.
Yeah,
Not
but
all of
because
them,
the
but I mean,
technology was already there.
We have
Yeah.
reusable rockets at this point, which means instead of $70 million to get heavy cargo to the space station, it's coming down to closer to 20, and soon it'll be closer to 5, and Lockheed and all the others who want those big budgets are pissed off.
Not happy about that, no.
So, I mean, yeah, scales of economy is, you really hit the nail on that one. I mean, the reason the pricing on this stuff is still up there is there are no scales of economy. You don't have a mass market for these.
They're building like two
thank
of
you.
these rockets the size a year.
Yeah, but there's also just can't be enough contracts to go around far enough that enough companies can really
Good.
get enough money and funding. And
We don't want there to be
competitive
scales of
bidding.
economy and
Yeah,
weaponry.
that is kind of.
God,
a thing.
yeah,
Well, I mean, maybe for
absolutely.
rocket design, not for missile design, since they're related.
Yeah.
but
So, North Korea has ICBM engines, and we pretty much know
We
where
just
they
have
came
to sit
from
here
now.
and wait until they kill us. So
the,
yeah.
the experts say that they think that they
I
don't
don't think
have.
they're hitting Boston.
They don't
Hawaii,
have the
We're good.
Guam, what was it?
there's a lot of technical difficulties to work
But you
out.
guys,
for,
think
like,
about the
fitting it
silver
in a-
lining here. Nuclear war is going to be great for tourism in Guam.
Yes.
Yes, so I hear.
And then I was talking with a friend of me and Gregg's last night, and apparently a good way to like protect yourself is to like cover yourself in shampoo. Like apparently this came out in the State Department, like cover yourself in shampoo, but specifically do not use conditioner.
From a scientific standpoint, that's a fact. Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
I don't understand. I think it's some propaganda bullshit on the shampoo community. Is what I think.
Like Schwab and Johnson & Johnson.
yeah,
They were
I
like,
think
just,
I think this is
everyone stock up.
I feel like any situation in which that's going to be sufficient to help,
Because
you're already
every-
too close for it to
because
matter.
every lady knows the most important thing is the conditioner, not the shampoo.
Legally, at this point, I have to state that Kayla does indeed own lots of stock in the various,
I love my
cosmetics
conditioner.
companies.
It makes my hair so silky smooth.
So don't buy any.
She's about to name drop. I'm pretty sure, Brandon. She's
I have like a generic thing in my.
nice.
I whatever I stole from like the hotel I was last in.
I'm like, yeah. I don't know. I don't really. Let's move on. North Korea has ICBMs.
Yeah,
we know
let's
this
go
now.
to a warmer subject.
Yeah.
How
How
about
about racism? Have we talked about that yet?
about some racism? So
I think we have a couple of
me
those.
and Kayla and Max spent the weekend Saturday over at the free speech rally, the counter protest.
Yeah,
The real free speech rally.
Yes, and
it was so much fun.
with
was.
40,000 of our closest friends here in Boston.
Oh my God.
Well, I mean, 15,000 of them showed up a little late.
They were
They
being
did, they
fashionably
did.
late, Mac.
They did, they
Okay,
did.
Fair enough. I
All
can't
right?
argue
You
that
can't
point.
get your hair looking perfect and be on time.
And, march like
You
3
gotta
miles from
condition it
Rocks.
first.
Yes.
Not everybody can anyway, Mac. Your hair does
literally,
actually
I
have a
think the
good
march
bounce
was
to it,
great. I
but
think the march was
not everybody.
needed. I think the people in the march had a lot to do with this counter protest happening at all. But I also wish the march had shown up before the actual, in air quotes here, free speech rally had quit and run.
To be fair, their plan was fine for that,
Yeah.
except for the fact that the free speech rally gave up after like
Oh yeah, it's
45
not their
minutes.
fault they showed up late. It's that the other guys
Well, I
I mean,
quit,
they showed up on time.
quit and ran.
Well, I heard that they actually did slow down the march a little bit,
Yeah, they did.
and they on purpose so they can get the Nazis
Yeah, but
out.
that was specifically in response to them like giving up and being like, all
Yeah,
right,
they were
we're
trying
going
to
home
leave.
now.
Yeah.
And so this is an interesting one because a lot of people say, well, those weren't Nazis. And the guy who gave the main speech of the day at this point was VA Shiva.
Your bestie, your best friend.
And Shiva is running for Senate against Elizabeth Warren, so that'll go great for him.
I know he's getting
no
so
one's
much.
voting her out.
Yeah, he's getting so much media attention already.
But and him being Indian and an inventor and all this other fun stuff, obviously.
But he's a specific inventor.
Right, but
The
obviously, because of the fact that he's Indian and everything else, these weren't racist, or they wouldn't have let him talk, right?
Right, 'cause
That's their argument.
it's not like anyone has ever been racist towards another minority group or
right.
tolerated minorities that say the things that you
Yeah,
want.
well,
as the racist
that's
one to
their
do.
argument.
It's not like there's ever been a black person positioned right behind Trump who has a long history of violent racism.
Yeah.
Like that was never a thing.
No,
Well,
no,
to
no.
be fair, we're going to get to Arizona in a little bit.
So this
So much
event was
Wrong
set up
racism.
by people who claim to disavow the alt-right. They talk a lot about how this was about free speech, how it was set up before Charlottesville, but then you look at the actual list of people they had originally invited to speak and who were listed, and you see people like Based Stickman, you see Joe Biggs, you see Augustus Invictus, Cassandra Fairbanks was listed.
Big Alaska was originally.
Yeah, Baked
I don't know.
Alaska, like Gavin McInnes. These people were all supposed to be there, and
Several of them were advertised as like the featured speakers.
right. And so when you invite the entirety of the alt-right's poster children, you can't really tell us that you aren't with the alt-right.
And if you invite also the same people that organized Charlottesville,
yeah,
you are part of the Nazi alt-right.
Also, there's the minor detail that this wasn't actually their first rally. They had one a few months ago back in May.
Yeah, that they did speak at.
Yeah, and that one included Augustus Invictus.
Who is a great person.
Look, just because he's an open white supremacist who advocates a second civil war against communist, cultural, Marxist, and international financiers. And,
self-described commie slayer.
And doesn't believe in the Holocaust.
right.
Yeah, so they
But
can
I mean,
claim.
I'm sure that he's a fine person.
Well, they can claim all
there's
they
fine
want
people
that they
on
aren't,
close.
with the alt-right and especially aren't with the Nazis. But if that's the case, stop inviting them to your events. Like specifically, like I understand you standing there and saying, I did not invite the KKK. They showed up. Well, at that point, you did not invite them. Great. Now, why they think it's comfortable to be on your side and why your views
you're
seem to
okay
match
with
up
that.
so much.
Not to mention
Isn't-
not like
is a thing you
being
should-
on your
well-
side, but they think it's okay to publicly be on your
Right,
side.
but what I'm saying is this, and it's a very important point, I think, is that, if you didn't invite them and you disavow them, hey, great for you. But if they show up on your side and believe that your side is the side that they should be on, and you know their beliefs, isn't that a point where you look back and think, what's wrong with my side that it's ended up being the side of the KKK?
Yeah, clearly I've done something wrong here.
And
How
none
did
of
this all go so horrible?
None of these people are doing that. They're not taking that step back and saying, well, I'm not a Nazi and I'm not a member of the KKK and I'm not a white supremacist, but all of them showed up on my side of this fight. So maybe
Why
there's
am I
something
surrounded
wrong
with
with,
these people?
this so-called my side. They're not doing that. And I think they really should, take the time to just think about why all those people seem to feel so comfortable on their side of the fight.
Well, I mean, they didn't seem nearly as comfortable here in Boston since after Charlottesville and the expectation that there would be literally thousands of counter-protesters, they went, oh, maybe we shouldn't go to Boston, and a whole bunch of them
They were all
dropped
scared.
out.
Showing their true colors. They'll walk around in a city where open carry's fine and they'll all be carrying guns and,
And
act
they'll
like
have
tough
about the
guys.
similar numbers to the people they're up against.
Yeah, even numbers, and maybe a couple people get in minor brawls, and maybe someone gets run over by a car because they're horrible human beings on that side.
Yeah, but we were so unfair to them after Charlottesville by sharing the pictures that they took and posted on social media. Like they really were like, do not judge them because they marched with a torch. So they didn't want to make that same mistake.
Right. So here they get told, that Boston likes to show up. And they get told that Boston's going to show up. And so they don't. 50 people showed up, and
If that, like, I don't even think that was
the picture that I
there,
saw. that
there were a
someone-
couple pictures from inside of the thing, and
Yeah.
actually a
One of them was a
video from inside of it. And
panoramic.
there was a panoramic one. There were
Yeah.
about 50 in there.
Courage under fire in that place.
Yeah, but I mean, like, a lot of the reports are saying, like, roughly maybe 40 to 50. Like, no
Yeah,
one,
it
like,
was
there's
right
no,
It
around
was
Yeah.
hard to get a good view. It
so,
was
like,
honestly
I don't even
not,
want to give them the legitimacy of full 50. Like
it was-
maybe. We don't know.
Yeah.
There was so little of them.
I mean,
So-
does it really matter when it's 1,000 to 1?
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
there were 40,000 counter protesters, and it was just the greatest thing to see because here you have Boston, really a town that should show up just historically for any protest, really. I mean, you just show up because it's Boston. Get outdoors.
And when we show up to fucking win.
Yeah, Boston.
right.
Well, I mean, the Celtics aren't going to anymore now that they traded everyone away, but
That's a different podcast, Greg. Okay.
that's a different show.
That is a different podcast. Let's not trigger me again.
Danny
We're looking at
Ainge,
the
we
Earth a
hate
whole
you.
different way too, though, Greg. Think of it that way. The Earth
Avery
will have a whole
Bradley,
new
you are my
perspective.
family, and I miss
So-
you.
Yeah. So, anyways, here we are on the other side of an amazing counter protest up against a very weak actual event.
I just want to note for real quickly that there's been a lot of push on the media on the right to suggest that Boston was violent and look at how aggressive these counter protesters were, which is a bunch of ridiculous bullshit. But we have some numbers here. 33 people ended up being arrested at the protests total.
Out of
40,000.
40,050
And the
on
arrest
average.
didn't start until about like 5 p.m.
Some
Yeah.
of them were actually earlier.
A few, but
For example, 3 of the people arrested are suspected white supremacists, according to the police, who showed up with bullet-resistant vests, and one of them brought a gun. They were arrested before 5 p.m.
Oh yeah,
But-
yeah. Like you show up to a non-open carry state. Like Massachusetts is so like we're not like anti-gun, but we're like fucking anti-gun. So it's like, what did you think was gonna happen?
And also, the police specifically instructed everyone not to bring not only weapons, but anything like a weapon. Like,
Yeah.
for example, a sign on a stick, no.
No flagpoles. They were
Yeah.
specifically like,
Yes.
like
Yeah.
you can have a flag, just not the pole.
yep.
Yeah, no.
And at least 2 of the other arrests, so at least 5 out of the 33 were arrested, were part of this free speech rally. So maybe 28 people potentially up to out of the 40,000 were arrested on one side. And on the other side, it was 5 out of 50. I wonder who was the lawful
I know.
side.
Yeah. What statistical probability has the greater amount of agitators in it? It's like you got 5 out of 50 or I don't know, 25 out of 40,000. Like who's more likely to attack?
It's actually substantially worse than that because that 5 might be an undercount. Those are just the ones that are confirmed to have been on that side. And then the police also said that they thought a bunch of the arrests were just people showing up to make trouble and actually didn't care about either side, weren't necessarily political, were literally just there to cause trouble.
Probably. I mean, you're always going to have those people that see a big crowd
Of course.
and say, oh, I know how I can do this. And also it's at the time that they were making a bulk of these arrests, it was it was in the evening. It was incredibly hot that day. There's a lot of people. It's I'm sure some of it probably started when the police were like, hey, we want to go home. Get the fuck out of here. And then you got people who, I'm sure some of them probably were drinking because it's Boston.
There was definitely at least one arrest for open container.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm sure you probably have a lot of flasks going around, and then when it's you on top of being in the sun all day, people are just ain't they're grouchy and they're hangry,
Yeah.
And of course, they want to get over to yell at the people that have left, and the police are forming cordons to restrain them. It's gonna get people's emotions running high.
Yeah,
Especially when the riot cops are shoving back the line of protesters who were just standing there before because the cops want to clear the area.
oh yeah,
So of course people are gonna get pissed
and
off.
this was
from that.
I mean, we could have done if we wanted to fuck shit up on the counter protest side. We would have fucked some serious shit up.
Seriously, if 10% of the counter protesters had wanted to get to the free speech rally
and wanted to be violent.
those cops that were there between the two groups would not have been able to stop
20
them.
of them?
Yeah, it was
there
only
were so many
2
with the
dozen cops.
march and with the outside, but there were very few in between the actual.
I mean, they had
Lots of
100
barriers.
plus riot cops about a block away.
Right.
But those riot cops would not have been able to get
No,
there
at
before
full speed, everyone would have already gotten
exactly.
to the bandstand. It was
So,
only
like,
a few hundred feet.
If there was any motivation there to do
Yeah,
that would have happened.
But I loved
Yeah, they
how
were
like,
not
and even
violent.
before they started like really like reporting the arrests, we had great old Donnie Orange Agent Trump, who on his Twitter, because that's all he does, say like he tweeted out like many police agitators in Boston. That was the first tweet as he like, because and they said that like from his White House aides that he had been watching like the protests all morning. And so it's like that's the first thing out of your stupid fingertips.
I did like the follow-up though, where he was talking about like all the people, like celebrating all the people protesting against, hatred and bigotry, which coming from Donald Trump, I'm pretty sure means he was talking about the smaller group there.
Oh yeah.
And
it was an hour and a half later.
more importantly though, even if you take it at like the good sort of face value thing where he was talking about all the counter protesters, like literally half of them probably had a sign that specifically mentioned him by name as part of the problem.
Yeah, it was my favorite clip was like this like older not older white guy but like middle-aged white guy, and he was just like such a bro, but he was like, yeah, fuck them, let them have their free speech. He's like, look at us, we fucking outnumber them, I ain't scared because we fucking won. So their thoughts are gonna die in the sun today.
Well, now that's all over.
And
here we are.
And we beat racism in Boston. So
right, we won.
We had a nice follow up when the people that organized the March Against Sharia a couple months ago, and were planning marches in 37 states in September, all decided, you know what? Let's just go with an internet day of action.
Yeah, they said something like 67 planned protests. Events. In 37 states had all been canceled
just by that one group.
Because of Boston.
Just because of Boston, which I was like, fuck yeah.
Right?
I mean, their statement was pretty hilarious because they were like, oh, there might be violence, blah, blah, blah.
I know.
Like, really?
Because you never know. Antifa might show up.
The fact that people think anti-fascism is a bad thing blows my mind.
Right?
Like Antifa is specifically anti-fascism. Fascism is a thing you should not like. You should be happy that there's a group of people willing to fight fascism.
Yeah, and
I'm like obsessed with these people now. Like I want to know everything about.
It just blows my mind that they use that term as a negative. Yeah. And if you're out there saying anti-fascism is a negative, well then that puts you on the side of pro-fascism.
Yeah, it's like
absolutely.
And if you're pro-fascism, well then fuck off. I mean,
sure. There's plenty that you can criticize members of Antifa over. They are certainly. Many of them are anarchists, not all of them, but many of them are. And
that's not a thing to. I mean, people
but
can have
like,
that belief.
Sure, but
fine with anarchists.
many of them take that and then go pick fights with the cops because they hate the cops.
Sure. Most of the times at like the G20, when you see a cop car flipped over, it was a black blocker, an anarchist, one of the Antifa.
Who probably does Antifa as well.
Sure, but I mean,
there are certainly things you can criticize individual Antifa members over, and you don't have to like support everything Antifa does.
Right.
But if you're against Antifa as a concept, or like the people that are going out and getting in fights with fascists,
or putting themselves on the front lines to fight the fascists,
or take that hit that would have been delivered by a fascist to someone that was innocent.
Yeah, no, we need people like that willing to lay it on the line.
I can't not ever say Antifa ever again. Like that is like that was the greatest moment of my life.
I really like it when people write it in all caps.
Yeah,
like.
H, and like I think there was someone I followed on Twitter, and they showed like this GIF, it was like I think it was like someone from like the Real Housewives, and it was like this this black woman, and she just like does the hair flip, and they were like, here comes Antifa. It's just it was beautiful. It was like the one moment where I was like, that's funny, that's actually funny.
So we've learned how to get them to stop their events, just outnumber them, and they back down because they're just a bunch of scared little basement dwellers.
Yeah, they only have like strength behind a keyboard when no one can like see them, no one can like call their mom or their employer or their dating websites that they're on, so.
I mean, it may be somewhat helpful to have the big turnout in a place where they can't make up for their lack of numbers through firearms or vehicles.
Right. Yeah, it definitely was going to be hard to get a vehicle onto the common that day. There's only a few entrance points where vehicles really weren't getting onto there, and they had dump trucks blocking them.
garbage trucks
Yeah.
and everything that's like more than 5 tons.
Yeah. I've driven on the Common before for like delivering speakers to the bandstand and things like that for other events, and it's not easy to get around if you're not following the rules actually. So yeah, they made it very hard for anyone to do that here. And then I mean, again, just the numbers. I mean,
Oh yeah.
the sheer numbers of people. So every city needs to come out in those numbers if they show up.
I know. I wish I like had like someone could just like pay me money to like go to all these protests.
You mean like George Soros? Because I hear that he's hiring all of these people, and that's why.
Okay, I
I
keep
wish
being
he
told that if I show
was.
up, George Soros will pay me. And I keep giving my social security and my routing numbers to these people, and I still do not see a paycheck. I don't know what I'm doing wrong.
Are you sending nude pics before the event? That's what I was doing, and I started getting paid finally. So.
Oh, is that I have to give my social security and a nudie?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, then why didn't no one tell me?
Identity, two forms of verification for your identity.
Oh, well then that's easy peasy. Lemon
Financial
squeezy.
identity or sexual
I-
identity. You need both. That's all.
I mean,
We like to be like inclusive,
Yeah.
so we just want to know.
That's
We're
all.
just curious.
Yeah.
Really,
We want
like,
to
we're not gonna
respect you
judge
in every way you are.
We want to respect you the most we possibly can, so we need that additional information.
Yeah, like,
to...
and could you like submit your preferred pronoun as well? So we can,
at this point, the alt-right, the neo-Nazis, the KKK do feel a little empowered to come outside without a mask on. I think a few of them losing their jobs, getting disowned by their families might not anymore, but they seem to be willing to come outside and show their faces.
which is really strange because like these people are like the ugliest people.
It's true.
I mean, that really shouldn't be the judge of someone's ideas.
but
No, but like I don't
No,
know.
but why the hell not say anything
But if
negative
you're
you
already-
can,
like, if
really,
you
just
have-
because of the people that
like,
they are, you know?
if you're coming out of public to showcase your ugly ideas and you're also ugly, like you're just ugliest, right?
especially if you're coming out like, people like me
Yeah.
are superior to everyone
yeah,
else.
and you're claiming genetic superiority as
Yeah.
well. That's a really
You're kind
tough,
of undercutting
that's
your
a
point
tough,
in
tough
every
sell.
possible way by being a white nationalist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
if you've got like neck
Or white
hair
supremacist,
for no
whatever.
reason, like you know what I mean?
They're not
Like
exactly physical specimens walking
Not
around.
most of them,
with
no.
the tiki
well,
torches.
I don't
no.
understand like why you think you can be like show your face. I just don't like do us
Well,
Do us a
now
favor.
that they do, I think we just need to keep showing up in bigger numbers. I mean, it's pretty simple.
And I mean, Boston really handled that correctly. If you were there, you saw that when someone came into the crowd, obviously planning to join the supposed free speech rally, everyone surrounded them and had cameras out so you could get pictures of their
Yeah.
faces.
Yep.
Like that is
and we
the correct
literally
response.
shamed them.
Yes, also literally shamed.
I don't watch Game of Thrones, but that was the only reference I understood.
Well, like the Circe one, was she that one or
we
what?
would
Yeah.
chant shame at
Oh, okay.
anyone.
Yeah, well, they've done a few. So, I, as a person who wasn't there, I'll say you guys.
Yeah,
you
because
guys
you're
are
not like
definitely
you're not
right.
part of the resistance, you know.
Yeah, I'm not that much a part of the resistance. See, I could be like 99% a cool kid, but this is a tough
Like if
crowd.
I have to show up somewhere on a Saturday,
This is a tough crowd. That's a high expectation. No, it is.
Like,
Way
I-
too much to expect.
I have cereal to eat in my boxers.
First of all, I
Look, he
actually
had
do.
performance anxiety.
I
Okay.
have 3 bowls of cereal a day, bare minimum. And second of all, you guys did a great job with Facebook. You guys didn't need me there.
I felt like I was there.
yeah, it was great coverage, really.
Well, I think they should all really start, continue to show their faces so we can continue to get their OkCupid accounts taken away from
Yes,
them, like
I
good old Christopher Cantwell there.
Oh my god, that's my favorite thing ever. It's like the fact that like first of all, people are still using OkCupid. I thought that like died when like Tinder started.
I heard somebody was making fake OkCupid profiles, dating profiles, after doxing some of those people and then linking it to them. And
Okay,
by
that's
that I
good.
mean I actually just made that up, and I was figuring that somebody might have had that idea
Oh,
at
I
some
thought you
point.
were gonna be
Somebody
like so.
should do that, actually. But,
No, I think they would
I'm
ban
not saying,
you.
I'm not saying. I'm just saying it's an idea. Somebody,
So Christopher Cantwell, who seems to have been, relatively helpful in getting Charlottesville off the ground and moving, was part of a Vice documentary of the events of Charlottesville, where Vice, had access to him beforehand, during, after. Ended up having 4 warrants for his arrest issued after Charlottesville for, well, in all honesty, his use of tear gas against people, right?
Was this the guy
Yeah.
that
Pretty much. There were one of I don't know what the 4th count was because there were 4 different counts that they had warrants for. 3 of them were felonies, and those were the ones that they identified what he was wanted for. I don't know what the 4th one was about, and the 3rd one was a little ambiguous because it was about like attacking someone, but it wasn't clear whether it was in reference to the tear gas or not.
Right. So he ends up going online and posting a video on August 16th. After acting so tough at the event and so tough in the Vice documentary.
It's important to mention a couple of the quotes from the Vice documentary because
Sure.
it really just sets
Just
the
a couple.
tone.
Oh my.
Well, specifically,
really the
there
man,
was the
Luke.
one where he was talking about how, quote, I'm carrying a pistol. I go to the gym all the time. I'm trying to make myself more capable of violence.
Yes.
And then there was the,
That was my
quote,
favorite.
we're not nonviolent. We'll fucking kill these people if we have to. Or the, quote, a lot more people are going to die before we're done here. Or the time where he suggested the death of Heather Hare was, quote, more than justified.
Oh yeah, and
So,
like
you
if
know.
clearly these people just can't get out of the way of the car, and and the driver was, what else was he supposed to do but just to plow right into them, and so
like a block away.
so he could feel safe away from
So these are the types of things that he's saying. And then, once real consequences head his way, he posts this video on August 16th, crying and whining about warrants and
these are
saying
the
they've
most
done everything
delicious
in their
male
power.
tears
Yeah, it's great.
I drank, and I think it was like I watched it a couple of times just so my little heart could feel love.
Hashtag crying Nazi.
Oh my
Yes.
god.
Wasn't it just the idea of pressure being applied actually is really what
He had heard that there was supposedly a
Yeah.
warrant. He didn't know yet. at
He
that
heard
time.
Yeah.
that there was
Yeah, and
supposedly
he was already
exactly what I
crying.
heard.
Yeah, and
and
he
I
was-
think that's probably about average for their side.
And
Yeah.
just correct.
I think you're probably right.
Yeah.
On that. I just love the part where in the video he's like, "We've done everything in our power to keep this peaceful. I know we talk a lot of shit on the internet, right? But like literally, Jason Kessler applied for a permit like months ago for this. They just won't stop. We've done everything in our power. We're just
Wow.
like." Motherfucker, 4 days ago you were talking about using violence
And killing
now,
people.
Yeah, and like justifying the fact that someone just did exactly that and saying you were going to use more violence.
Yeah, no, he is a pansy, a weak little man with bad ideas, a racist, a white supremacist, a Nazi, and
And he's from New Hampshire.
No, he's from like
that's-
New York originally, but
that's
he
not
moved to
true.
New Hampshire.
That is true.
Well, yeah, because if you're a shitty person, you move to shitty places in New Hampshire.
Ugh. Yeah, but just so you don't need New Hampshire associated with these things, like, I'm a
So, I
Any
mean,
more than it already
Yeah,
is.
they've got enough
yeah.
problems.
I know, like,
That's what I'm. No, my point is not to stick up for my home. I'm saying very
you know
much
what's
so.
even
The
funny?
dysfunction is
Add
there.
on.
Yeah.
But you know what's even funnier? I think it was a Gizmodo or something like that came out with an article that said Vermont actually had the most internet trolls.
I
How-
absolutely
Well, I can
mean,
believe that just because it's
yeah.
like 600,000 people and nothing to do.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
per capita,
In New
what else are they
Hampshire,
going to do?
in New Hampshire, south of Concord, there's a little bit to do. North of Concord, there's literally just nothing at all.
So
Vermont's just north of
if you're
Concord.
south of
Yeah.
Concord, you can go to Massachusetts easily.
Mm.
If you're in like
If you're in the
Vermont, where are you going?
But also, like, they don't call it the White Mountains
I
for
don't know.
nothing there. So,
I think there's a lot of people taking action based on everything that's happened in the last few weeks. I think there's a lot of stuff going on, but right now, honestly, it feels almost like the ball's in their court now. Like, they did Charlottesville, so we did Boston, and now what are they gonna do in what's coming next from them?
I believe it's the battle with the Juggalos in DC.
oh my God.
And there
I
we
thought that
go.
was an Onion article. I swear to
Right?
God. I swear to God.
So explain this for everyone.
So sorry, I don't have this in my notes. I think it's September 16th, but I don't remember the date offhand. Both the Juggalos.
Was it called the March of the Juggalos?
Yeah, the March of the Juggalos is coming to DC to protest the fact that the FBI considers them a gang, and they are very unhappy about that. And at the same time, Trump supporters are going to have their mother of all rallies in DC, and both of these groups hate each other. So this should be really entertaining.
Also, like, we always have these, like, we constantly keep having these moments, like, 15 times a
It
day
is September 16th, by the
of
way.
it's 2017. Why am I saying these things?
Like the word juggalo. Why am I
And
saying this?
why am I about to say I support the
You're
Juggalos?
right.
I never thought that would be true. I never thought that would be true. But
I really
They
want
finally found someone that I'm willing to root for them against.
Yeah, like, there's like a moment where I'm like, I'm on the Juggalo side
my,
of
my
things.
problem here is if there's really one group of that size that I think is actually weaker than the alt-right, it's probably the Juggalos. I
I don't know.
mean,
They believe in miracles, like magnets. How do they work?
right. But, you know, the juggalos are all carrying like 250 extra pounds of Faygo on their waist.
It's
you
true.
know? And
I really hope
I
they
mean,
like. I need to.
that's not fat shaming. That's just literally saying that
Yeah,
Faygo
yeah.
stuff is bad for you.
It really is.
I really like. I want to go see this. I want to see this live in person. I have so many questions.
I mean, so Kayla is now taking a GoFundMe for her travel plans.
I mean, like I have a lot of places I want to go travel. Like, I mean, I would love to see a juggalo punch a Nazi in the face. Like, I just think that would be like a moment you could never relive. And
I
or
mean-
that you could get on film and then relive every day for the rest of your
Right.
life.
yeah, but like if you're there in person, it's special. You know what I mean? Like it's like
yeah.
you know, it's like see the birth of your child, not through text. You know, like
So that's only that's a couple weeks away, a few weeks away now. And so we'll see what happens there, but I'm sure something else happens in between.
oh,
That
I
does
mean
seem
something's gonna
likely.
happen tomorrow because like Friday's shit show is like the theme of the Trump house.
Yeah.
Well, sure. I mean,
But that's F5 day,
Let's move
you
over
know.
to some of the Trump stuff here.
Oh my God, where should we start?
I mean, let's start with the easiest one. You know, Trump has decided to tell the world that he's going to shut down the government if he doesn't get his wall.
I like how that you think that's the easiest one. I thought you were gonna go with like Trump actually took a reasonable, like talked reasonably on a like through a prompter about
You
Afghanistan.
mean he read someone else's speech?
Yeah, like that would be the easy-
without going off script for once.
Which
that
I
is
still can't
literally the
do.
easiest thing he's done.
No, like yeah, but he did it, and then the day before he said the opposite, and the day after he said the opposite. So what's the point of
Yeah,
talking
what's he
about?
batting like on a baseball average? Like what's he hitting here? Like 110 or 150 or
No, it's
something?
1,000.
Not
It's
even.
1,000% of lies.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't
It's
heard
big
of
league. It's big league.
Every time he goes up there and it just seems
Whenever
well
he's
put
batting,
together,
it's big league.
Oh my
it
God.
suddenly falls apart big league.
Like,
Just immediately too.
It
Just
is so huge. His average of home runs, it's like Big Poppy
everybody
style.
will tell you.
Yeah.
Everybody will
So
tell
he
you.
says this
The best.
that he's going to shut down the government, and Paul Ryan's response: "I don't think anyone's interested in having a shutdown." Well,
all the
I
Republicans
mean, Trump
seem
is.
pretty clear that they think that this is politically bad for them and they don't want any part of it. And of course, they're going to have to come up with some sort of deal to get this through.
This is just driving the divide between them and Trump, and I am enjoying watching that divide grow. You know,
My favorite part is the fact that, like, at this point, basically the only way they can actually get a budget passed with the increase for the debt ceiling almost certainly requires them to make a deal with the Democrats and basically tell the Tea Party wing, Freedom Caucus, whatever you want to call it, to fuck off.
So, okay, so he tweeted
Yeah.
out that he's pissed off that he won't attach the budget to the VA bill. And I didn't do my homework, but I'm going to ask Mac anyways, because you probably know. Can they can't do that. They can't attach a budget bill.
I don't believe so. I think that in order to handle something like that,
Yeah, like I thought the budget like was always separate because it's not legislative.
I'm not 100% sure the details there, but I'm not sure if you can actually.
Yeah, like
attach
because when
it.
he
don't
tweeted
think-
that, I was like, I know Trump doesn't know how Congress or his job works. Like I
course.
understand. Like I understand that. Like it's very clear the fact that because he constantly is like you people aren't doing your job, and like he clearly thinks that like being president is like being CEO of America, and like you know since the CEO wants whatever he wants, he can just get it, and then he gets pissed off when like Mitch and Paul Ryan have to like tell like John Kelly like can you just like let him know that like you can't really do that like.
yeah.
Can you like tell him to stop tweeting? Like Congress is like kind of thing. There's processes and like I
Well,
don't know. Like there's like budgets.
This
There's like
growing divide of his incompetence and their slow but growing willingness to finally go in opposite directions and speak out. And we've got a few big ones like Jeff Flake really speaking out against him.
Well,
And
so-
just I mean like in
so
a
here's
book like
well,
really
so here's my
speaking
issue,
out.
right? So yes, like great. Bob Corker is saying that he's mentally unfit. We've all known that, right? Like Jeff Flake's publicly, but it's like these people are still voting 100% with the Trump.
Well, yeah, like
agenda.
their problem isn't with his policies or goals or anything.
It's-
They just think he's making them look bad.
Yeah, so it's
Yeah,
just
totally.
like yeah. So I mean, it's just like
Yeah, I don't agree with Jeff Flake's
No, it's-
politics.
but it's just
I
like-
just agree with his calling out Donald
yeah,
Trump.
But it's just like it's
Yeah.
kind of frustrating because it's like like you're right. Like
You're almost worse because you're trying to pretend like this isn't acceptable, and then you're enabling it at every turn.
and this,
Politics.
yeah, and like you're still gonna push the same agenda of his White House, even if you like invoke the 25th Amendment and like, get him out and Pence is there. Like you might invoke some weird other like creepy things that Pence wants, like demanding that every woman be called mother. Like
Dear
I mean,
God,
like
don't make that a long list about the creepy things that Pence wants, please.
Yeah, let's just
I
keep
mean,
that list
yeah,
short.
like, but I mean, like, it's gonna start with like mandating that you call every woman mother. Like, it's gonna be weird. Like,
We're all gonna have to wear those Amish outfits.
just us,
Yeah.
just me, and like my ovaries. So,
So Trump goes to Arizona. What a wonderful movie that was. So Trump is in Arizona, and during this rally, he attacks Flake. And what I find funny about all this this stuff that Trump is doing anti-Jeff Flake is that McConnell and McConnell's PAC are running all the attack ads against Flake's opponent, which means McConnell is, through that supporting Flake. So here's McConnell supporting Flake and Trump anti-Flake, yet they're supposed to be working together on these things.
They
And
get
it's
along
really,
great.
he
I
didn't
love
just attack like Senator Flake, right?
No.
He says in his speech, like, "Oh, they told me not to say his name, but I'm not going to. You all know who I'm talking about. It's one of two senators. He's not the other one. But
Yeah.
they told me not to say his name, so I said I'm not going to. I won't talk about him, but you know who I'm talking about."
The one that's the reason that healthcare failed by one vote.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
not going to say a name, but I am
Right.
going to make clear who I'm talking
And then
about.
it's like, and then his other partner who did vote but couldn't get his partner to make vote too. Those terrible. Like it's like the funny thing is like his aides, like John Kelly, like his staff is like, do not do this, and Trump can't help himself.
He just comes out and like specifically tells everyone, yeah, they all told me not to do this, so watch as I do
And
it.
like, and it does, and like in his life, like it's almost at the point where I'm like, I like made the, like with the solar eclipse, like he looked at the sun directly, and like as like his aides were like, don't look, and it's like, oh, what? Oh,
Took
and,
off the eclipse glasses
and there's
to
like,
do it.
and then kept looking up like six different times. So it's like, and he instinctively has to do whatever you say no to. So it's like, it was like, quick, someone tell him to resign, or no, tell him not to resign.
yeah.
Like don't resign, stay in office forever, because he's gonna be like, I'll show you.
Also tell him that, Obama wouldn't have had the guts to resign.
Oh my God. Oh, could we get like?
Or just tell him, you know what Obama never did? Resign.
Nice.
I feel like just start tweeting at Bannon now, since he's like at war with Trump. Like
He's
maybe
not really.
Well-
They're hitting Trump a little bit, but it's more about trying to get the rest of the Republicans in
if
line.
we could just like get a Breitbart article with that headline,
Yes.
Obama wouldn't have resigned. He would be out
Cover
the
it
next
on
day.
Fox and Friends.
Oh yeah, he'd be out the next day.
Earlier,
by like 10 a.m.
Earlier the same day of the actual event, Sarah Huckabee Sanders goes in front of some press and says unequivocally that they are not going to actually pardon Sheriff Joe Arpaio, and that it was not going to be announced that evening.
Well, they said they weren't going to talk about it.
Yeah.
So here we are at the event where Trump basically insinuates that don't worry about it, wink wink, he is going to get a pardon. He says he's going to be fine.
It goes, if I was Joe Arpaio, I would sleep well at night.
And so here we have good old Sheriff Joe, who actually broke the law as sheriff and is, he
is a
objectively a horrible human being.
Yeah, he is a grotesque monster, and like he doesn't even deserve to be called a human being anymore.
No,
He's
he
violated-
deserves the jail time.
Yes, he's violated every principle of being a law enforcement
People
officer.
are dead because of him.
Yes. And our president will probably be pardoning this man.
And like, what's dangerous? We're talking about this for the show. What I found was so dangerous in his rhetoric was the fact that he announced to his mob like fans, it's like Joe Arpaio goes, he got convicted for doing his job, and it's like huge applause and cheers, and they're chanting, and everyone's like, boo, you know what I mean? And it's like.
he got convicted for disobeying direct court orders.
For direct court orders of stop violating the Constitution and discriminating against what you think are like immigrants with no justification. You're just taking them off the street.
Yeah, you were literally harassing anyone that looked like they might be an immigrant, doing seizing property, arresting them.
You were taking children. He made a makeshift like shanty, like homeless, like I called the tent city.
And then made the inmates wear pink out in the middle of the desert heat with no air conditioning in a tent city.
Yeah,
just to fuck them.
Oh,
that was the entire point.
And then proudly compared it to a concentration camp. Like people died in these camps. He took children. Like he violated. Not only did he racially profile, he discriminated against and violated the Constitution. He violated human fucking rights. Like,
and then on top of that, he spent like a decade. Everyone that tried to, like, when reporters tried to come in to report on these stories and investigate, his deputies under his direction would go out and harass and arrest anyone that tried to screw with him. He basically ran Maricopa County like his personal fiefdom, and anyone that tried to undermine him had the hammer come down on them.
Oh yeah, my brother actually lives in Arizona. He lives in Phoenix, and he was like, that was like the one they voted him out. That was the one thing he was so fucking stoked about. It was the only thing about the election he was truly cared about, and he was like, we finally got him out. And now that he's gonna get I'm just so petrified, for what that he can put scarily start a precedent for. It's the fact that it's okay, you're gonna pardon this guy just because you can. He's literally only pardoning him because Joe Arpaio was a fan of his and a public fan, and so he's just gonna pardon him because he's president and he can.
Pretty much.
And now it's what is this gonna mean for the next time a police officer shoots an unarmed black man, and we actually maybe in a unicorn world actually get a conviction or an indictment? Are we just he's just gonna pardon them too?
Well, he can only do that in federal cases, so it at least limits the situations in which he can do that kind of damage. But the thing that's really interesting to me is the fact that, of course, the federal judiciary is incredibly upset over, well, basically everything he's done, but very specifically this, because this undermines the entire point of having a federal judiciary if you have the president just pardoning the people that committed law enforcement committing crimes against the Constitution and human rights,
unequivocally, indisputably committed crimes.
Yeah.
It annuls and void the entire rule of law, in its entirety.
But on the bright side, you have to give Trump credit for one thing in this, and that is that he did the impossible. He got the federal judiciary and minority groups to be on the same side of a legal case.
That he did. Wow. So that was Trump in Arizona basically lying the entire time.
One more thing about Arizona, sorry, before we move on. I was watching the aftermath, right? So after the protests ended, and speaking of corrupt cops, the police instantaneously just started shooting gas cans at the they didn't even give him time to meander home. Yeah, to disperse naturally. It was oh, it's over. And they just started shooting cans of gas just instantly into the crowds. And it's you could have just asked him to leave.
Arizona, everybody. I mean, I think, we're just going to keep seeing more of that. He just, of course, because he's out there on the campaign trail basically. So
also,
it's just
why
going to
is
keep
that fucking
happening.
legal? Why is it illegal for a first year in his first term president to have official re-election campaign events?
I believe the answer is that it never occurred to anyone to make this illegal, because what kind of fucking what is wrong with the person that would do that in the first place? Clearly, no one would support someone like that.
You know what I mean? I thought there was some type of rules, you know what I mean? It just doesn't make any sense. And why that no one's stopping him. You can schedule his schedule, put things in a schedule of actual things to do. It'd be oh, sorry, you can't have that campaign event. You have to be on a meeting, and then just I don't know, play like Fox and Friends in the like in an intercom, so he
Right.
thinks he's talking to like I don't know, like Chris Wallace or something.
I'm kind of surprised they don't like have a studio in the White House where they make a fake Fox and Friends to just like air anytime he's in
I'm
like
sure
the
they
Oval
do.
Office.
They have that like the Trump news now with Kellyanne,
yeah, but
like fuckface.
So we move on to Trump's Afghan speech, which, I mean, there's not much to say because we didn't learn much.
didn't actually say much of anything except I'm abandoning everything I've said up until this point on the
All
subject.
those promises he made on the campaign trail about, ending these wars and not sending in more troops. And
How stupid the whole thing was in the first place, and
turns out all you have to do to convince Trump that more troops are needed in the Middle East is show
that-
him a picture of women in Afghanistan in
No,
miniskirts.
not just that. You have to show him pictures of women and say, "Hey, Afghan women used to be fuckable."
Ah, that's how you get him.
Yeah, you have to say, "Hey, you would actually want to put your penis in this one. Let's go to war." That's
So-
how you get Trump to stay in war.
H.R. McMaster, the National Security Advisor, showed him a picture of women in miniskirts taken in 1972.
Like multiple pictures too.
Yeah. And that helped convince him that Western ways could work in that area. And who knows if that in itself is true in any way anymore. But beyond all that, what we did learn was that more troops were going at some time in the future, and they would
However
come
many
home
we don't really
at
know.
some time in the future,
Yeah, but we don't know how many,
or when, or for how long, or where.
or if there's going to be like a limit, or if it's just going to be like X amount every few. It's
So-
like there's nothing.
we didn't even really learn like what he really.
What does he
the-
want to accomplish?
Yeah, there's like nothing in terms
Is he
of
sending
details.
crack teams there to just outright kill all the Taliban, or
But
is
also-
he
and
sending
then-
people there to really shore up the government? Like what?
But he's also saying
what's
that we're
the-
not civilization building. So like
Yeah, we're not nation building.
we're not nation building. So that would essentially eliminate the whole build up the government because you're not building a nation now. So we're just
It makes literally no sense. But I do have to say it's weird because I find myself fighting internally over whether he's right on one thing, and that is, something that we watched Obama fail at very clearly, because the Taliban would listen to everything he said, which was on this exact date we're doing this exact thing, and then they would just avoid that. And then once the troops were pulled or moved from an area, or any of those dates had passed, then they would act again. And so they did use our announcing of troop level increases, our announcing of various surges, our announcing of when we were going to pull troops. They used all of that to their advantage. So that information was very helpful to the Taliban. So is it smart not to say these things?
I mean, it massively increases civilian casualties, and we know from the Soviet occupation of Afghanistan that not announcing your plans doesn't really seem to change things a whole lot.
So there we are. See?
But also too like, I mean we're at a point too with Afghanistan. Like I don't think we can ever really leave.
Or we have to leave and acknowledge
just give
that,
up.
Yeah,
Well,
those are the options.
I
is
mean,
stay
If
forever.
you leave, there's a vacuum in the Taliban. Fill it again.
Not
Well,
necessarily. I'm not
I-
even worried about the vacuum, but it's like it's like one of these things where it's like when you demolish a house and then you leave without building. You know what I mean? Like because we demolished their country.
I mean, the Russians did, the Americans did, the Taliban did. I mean,
Everyone got a chance.
Yeah,
at
but
that
we've
one.
been there the longest. Like
oh, at this point,
yeah,
sure.
like we hold the most wreckage. So
I mean, to be fair, we also did a massive amount of reconstruction, much of which was subsequently destroyed in subsequent fighting and or attacks.
oh yeah.
So,
yeah, like
we certainly, it's not like we haven't done anything to rebuild. It's just it hasn't made a whole lot of progress. And
So-
that should maybe raise questions about whether the strategy was effective in the first place.
oh yeah.
All we really got out of this was the simple fact that more troops are going in at some point. And this is completely counter to everything he said during the election campaign. And he tells everyone publicly that your decision-making process changes when you're behind the desk in the Oval Office.
Oh, because you actually learned something.
And
He doesn't, but
I know. Yeah.
and that's his excuse for going back on all of those campaign promises. I don't know.
But he did promise us
it's a
we're
tough one.
going to win.
Of course. Well,
Because we're gonna be so sick of winning.
You know,
Yes.
I honestly,
We're gonna win other nations.
I feel like
That's
I
how-
might be sick of winning.
yeah.
No, we haven't won
I'm sick
enough.
of his brand of winning,
Yes,
which is
yes.
called losing.
Correct.
So I feel strong about this Afghan plan now. Feel really positive.
So let's move on from the Afghanistan one, as you know we weren't told anything of any real value there,
Yeah.
so we don't know what to talk about. I want to talk for a few minutes here about Derek Black, someone I think that
yes.
everyone who hears this should really look into more and really understand and probably start to follow, because he's out there talking, and I just want to make sure everyone knows who this person is. Derek Black is the son of Don Black, and Don Black is the founder of Stormfront, kind of the white nationalist homepage on the internet. It's like the oldest, standing site of theirs. It's a huge
It's
community.
before the Daily Stormer.
Way before the Daily
Yeah, it's
Stormer
the
and all
one
the
that
others.
Daily Stormer is named for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I'm just saying. Yeah, it's
So-
like it's been around. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like we all know what Daily Stormer is. So
Yeah, so Stormfront here is kind of where all of the white nationalism, supremacy, neo-Nazi stuff started online. And, of course, it existed before that, but this was their online start. Now, what's interesting about Derek Black is not only is his father the founder of Stormfront and a former Grand Wizard of the KKK, but his mom, before being married to Don Black, was married to David Duke.
she's got great taste in
And
men.
so Derek refers to David Duke as his godfather. And David Duke, for a while, did, believe him to be his godson. Now, where it all gets interesting is Derek grew up in, what can be referred to as kind of white nationalist royalty. And really right at the center of everything. By 12 years old, there were sections on the Stormfront website that he was actually helping to operate. He had a kids radio show on their AM network. He was really involved with all of it. And now here he is on the other side of that, on our side, fighting against them, out there speaking out against them.
He publicly says he's a reformed neo-Nazi. Like he understands. Like he's like
He knows what's bad.
like
he knows
he's-
what he did was bad.
And he says
and
he was rehabilitated by the grace of God and people being kind to him.
So there's a few big podcasts that had him on, but a few days ago, The Daily from the New York Times had him on for a half hour, and it was a really good listen. And you learn a lot from just talking to this guy. But some of the interesting things that you learn is how he came to realize that what he was doing and what his family was doing was wrong. And the most interesting thing to me is he leaves for college, and really for him being down in Florida, that just meant going to the other side of the state. So he wasn't too far away from home and from family. And at college, it's the first time in his life he really feels like he can't talk to people about who he is. And so he hides the fact that he is, the son of the founder of Stormfront and the son of a former Grand Wizard of the KKK and someone who actually helped run all these various things. And at first, he doesn't actually, verbalize in any real way or even put into really strong, formatted thought why he's doing this. He just senses that it's the right thing to do, not to let anyone know who he is.
Kind of more shocked and surprised that he went to college. Because
You
usually
know?
when you're in a family business like that,
Well,
you don't have to.
If you're in those levels of business, the kids get sent to college usually.
Yeah, because they need to be able to run these businesses, which are money-making machines. And so he's there and he's not telling anyone who he is. And funny things happen on campus there. One time sitting in the cafeteria with a bunch of other students, one of the students starts yelling at the computer and turns his laptop around to show all the other students there a page on Stormfront that is the Lord of the Rings page, talking about how white supremacist Lord of the Rings actually is. And I mean, you can read all about it. There are some really good teardowns of why Lord of the Rings is actually very racist, and Tolkien was too. The Tolkien estate hates talking about it, but it's once you actually read it, you will not be able to go through any of those stories without just watching the pure and utter racism of the entire storyline.
It's actually not even that hidden.
No, it's
You just
not
don't
hidden.
Pay attention normally.
Once you get told and once you really read the studies that dig into who each race is and all that other fun stuff, so if you really like the series and you're already doing enough good work, there's no reason for you to go learn this stuff and ruin the series for you. But if you just want to know, it's out there.
Wasn't J.R.R. Tolkien from the 1600s or
No,
no, Hobbit. I was thinking Hobbit.
no, that's all within the last like 150 years.
Well, what I'm saying is like when it came out, because when did it come out? It was like
1900s, early 1900s, late 1800s.
It was like it was around the time when like racism was like a thing.
Oh yeah,
Oh
absolutely.
yeah. Yeah, well, just the same as like early Dr. Seuss was all
2017?
racist and things like that.
Well,
like,
Annie did porn. Side topic.
but anyways, so this person in this cafeteria turns this around screaming about, I can't believe they're trying to use Lord of the Rings and its current fame through these movies to get children into white nationalism and into this neo-Nazi bullshit. And there's Derek sitting there in this group of people having to agree with them all while, silently thinking to himself that he created that page. And that as growing up in a white nationalist family, he really liked the stories and he liked the movies and so he thought, this is my site. I'm gonna write about Lord of the Rings as a young teen. And to him, when he made it, it was a very happy moment for him because he was just a kid who loved the
Hey,
stories.
Mom, I did a thing. We were proud of me.
Right,
Daddy,
exactly.
love me. Give me a hug.
But now he's sitting here in this cafeteria with a slightly more progressive crowd. And here they are just yelling and screaming about how they can't believe this is being done. And he doesn't, of course, let them know that he's the one who created the page. I mean, that one, would they believe him? He'd probably have to sit there explaining a lot more at that point. But two, he doesn't want to get, chased out of the building either. And through all of this, no one figures out who he is for a while. And of course, as it always does, someone on campus figures it out. And they put the two and two together and they spread it all over campus that Derek Black is the son of Don Black. And Derek did all of these horrible racist things. And Derek, basically owns up to it. He doesn't fight. He doesn't yell. He just kind of sticks to himself. And he's at that point, he's shunned. Everyone on campus is ignoring him. They won't talk to him. They won't hang out with him. He's never getting a date. Like literally nobody wants to be near this guy. And what happens is through all of this, an actual Jewish person at the college comes to him and convinces him to go to Shabbat dinners with Jews, with other atheists and other religions, at the synagogue there in town. And he actually convinces him. And I think it was the shunning and all of the just amount of humiliation he felt himself by not being willing to tell people who he really was that led him to accept. And, he at least wanted to hear the other side. And he goes. And
it says here that he goes, I wanted to see, let me see a Jewish community thing so that if I was going to keep saying these anti-Semitic things, that at least I had seen real Jews. So, I mean, like,
right.
At least,
he was at least going to learn, whether it was for the right reason or not, what wasn't relative to the outcome.
Yeah.
The outcome took a long time, but
at least he acknowledged that he was saying things without having any real knowledge of what he was talking about.
So the outcome took almost 2 years of it, but over that 2 years, it was a growth period. It just took to 2 years for him to be willing to do the next thing that he did. And one of the interesting things he talks about, and some of the other people involved talk about, is that he would show up to these events ready to defend a belief he had. He would always come with a belief in mind. And he would bring studies. And one of them was a study, or a set of studies. I believe he had 12 studies that were very white nationalist and supremacist in origin that he brought specifically to back up his belief that the white race, on average, had higher IQs because of the better genetics and being the master race. And he brought 12 studies to back this up. And
it was actually just the bell curve written in 14 different languages.
What happened was the person who had originally brought him to these let him speak, let him talk about these studies and let him talk about even like the statistics of these studies and how they did their modeling and everything else. And then decided to go as simple as he could at the problem to start and said, first, you have 12 studies. I, knowing this topic was coming, have 91 studies from actual, real reputable sources like, say, Stanford, showing that what you've just said is not true. But let's not go there. Let's not get that confrontational. First, I want to talk to you about the math and the statistics and all the other fun stuff that was done in your studies, the ones that you have.
Let's start at the beginning. Let's figure out what math is.
Exactly. So he initially starts going over the stats, basic stats, stuff you're going to learn in high school stats classes with him, and showing him how to identify in these studies where they're cheating, where they're just, making false equivocations, where they're not actually telling the truth, and where you can see they're cherry picking data to make a point when if you looked at all of the data, that point would not be made. And so over the course of that evening, he gets him to understand that each of the studies he brought to back up his point were obviously false and were obviously slanted with a very specific opinion going into the study that they just wanted to prove instead of trying to just actually get the correct answer.
So what
And then he
do you know what time frame, when did he go to college? Because I know he's kind of older, right?
This was only a few years ago.
Now,
He actually came out with his big letter to the SPLC in 2013. While he was still at college.
How long ago was this? When his process?
Oh, like 5-6 years ago, and then like a couple years, and then in 2013 he put that letter in the SPLC.
Considering our society today and just like how tense everything is, this seems like such a long time ago, that the fact that someone was able to sit down with a person and say hey, your facts aren't correct, let me show you why they're not right.
But that's what I'm saying. I think it took his experiences at college and just how shunned he was by such a large group of people to really convince him that he might want to listen. It took that jarring of an event.
Yeah, it's really it's kind of it's surreal to know that he was able to be open to hearing,
it gets really more interesting, because that evening, then the people he's dealing with at this Shabbat dinner, go over the various studies that disprove everything that he had believed on this one point. And I think that was really key, that they would tear down one wall and one wall only. It was, we will at least fix this one misunderstanding you have. You will go away still with all of your other beliefs. Maybe they're a little weaker now, but you now understand this one thing you believed was not true. And they did it that way through the entire process, from what he says and, how they talk about it. And so he would come to them with a very deeply ingrained from birth kind of belief. He grew up in this family. So these things were taught to him by the time he could understand speech.
They were he was born with them.
Yeah. And so
probably the only person who was.
And he would bring it up and he would say, here's a thing. You always hear them say, well, yeah, but whites are this or whites are that,
Greg,
and then they would break that one down.
How many people have you not discussed, but online, right, who have tried to be this is what, try to prove, and then you're hey, here are the real facts, and then they immediately double down and be your facts are wrong, even though
exactly. The fact that he was willing to listen is key here, but the way they did it was also really key. The slow pace of it kind of sucks because of how long it takes, but I think he's an extraordinary case in that, from birth, he grew up in that family of all families.
A part of him, deep down inside, always kind of felt like what he was doing was wrong.
Well, he said that, the quote, "My dad, I genuinely believe, who I know very well, does not believe that what he's doing is something bad to other people. Doesn't make it untrue, but a lot of these people don't realize that they're actually hurting other people by their policies." So that kind of implies that, at least when he was younger and before he understood the situation better, he probably felt that same way.
Yeah, I feel like he probably already had a weird inkling deep down inside that he just had that he had a good bone left in his body to be hey, we're just gonna keep twinkling and tickling the back of your neck to be this isn't right. This isn't right. I know it feels right. It feels right, but it's not right.
That could have been what was speaking to him, when he went to college and didn't tell anyone who he was.
Yeah.
Because that was an active choice he made.
Oh, yeah.
No one told him, don't tell anyone. He doesn't say and my dad said they wouldn't like it, so I didn't tell. No, he says, I felt like I shouldn't tell them. So here's where it gets really just amazing. He decides that he finally, that last barrier is down, that everything he used to believe is wrong, that he is not a white nationalist, a white supremacist, a neo-Nazi, any of these things anymore. He considers himself reformed. He is, working with these other people to better the cause of inclusiveness, of diversity, of all the things that we really want. And his way of coming out to the white nationalist community is really interesting. During one of the interviews that I listened to, he said that the way to speak to the entire white nationalist community is to get the Southern Poverty Law Center to post your message on their blog, because the entirety of the white nationalists and white supremacists read this blog, because it's the source of the people who hate you the most and the people who are working the strongest against you. And so if you can get the SPLC to post your comment, the entire white nationalist community will see it. So he pens a letter to them that he wants them to post on their blog, stating what's happened with him and how he's changed sides and why he's done it, and laying out just all of his points. And you can still find this online. Just search for Derek Black SPLC blog and it'll pop right up, and we'll link to it as well. And the funniest point of all is he puts this up, and the next morning his dad calls him all worried, saying, "I think you were hacked because someone used your email and sent something to the SPLC." And he has to tell his dad, "No, I was not hacked. That is actually what I believe."
Like I like, people are people. They all deserve a place in life. There's happiness and love. Like that's what I believe now, Dad. I believe.
Yeah, sorry.
And I still love you because you're my dad, and I want you to love me back. Oh wait, did you just hang up on me?
Yeah. So his dad really had trouble dealing with that, of course. And his dad's birthday came up only shortly after that. And at that time, he was not invited to the birthday party. But he still went anyways. Did not go to the party itself, but after the party had food at a restaurant with his father, where his father and him talked about his beliefs, how he got here. And his father spent most of the time just not understanding how you could believe these horrible things. How did the Jews get to you? And in the end, his father tells him that if this is what having a son feels like, I wish I hadn't had a son, and walks out.
Ouch.
And that's Derek Black.
Ouch.
And Derek has taken this on the road. He's doing interviews. He's going on shows. He's talking to people. And I think he's someone that, if you've made it through all of this fun storytelling here, you should look up more. You should go find other things he said, the things he's doing, the organizations he's working at. Because
I think what is it? His biggest organization is what? Life After Hate.
Yeah, Life After Hate is one that he's working with, and just all of them. He is doing some wonderful things, and the best person to really understand where these people are coming from, I think, is one of them who's reformed. So there you go. We're gonna link to all that fun stuff.
That's a positive note to leave off of.
Right?
Yeah.
Surprising that the godson of David Duke is probably one of the most powerful allies we have at this point.
Hey, you got to take him where we can get him.
The most positive thing we had going on too so far on the podcast.
I mean, yeah. That was an uplifting story with a somewhat happy ending. I mean, his life is still going, so.
And it is. But the person who was willing to change their mind on something that core and fundamental, at the bare minimum, will have people listening with even a slightly open mind, I guess, to a new idea, more so than they would be to somebody who simply has, quote unquote, always believed a certain thing. Folks at least will listen to the person that changed their mind. Whether they agree or disagree, it's just provocative. People like it. So, yeah, I guess that we're grasping a bit. But no, it actually is a really cool thing that he's out there doing that he's, out there talking to people about different ideas and why he would change his mind on something that radical. So,
Yeah.
It's great. It's a great show, guys.
Okay, well, there we go. We're
Good
an
job,
hour
guys.
and a
Good
half
job.
in
Good
here
job.
about,
Good game.
and
Good
I
game.
think we are calling it a show. There we go. Episode 22 in the can.
2-2, baby.
All right, everyone. Of
Deuces
course,
Deuce, baby.
listen to all the wonderful outgoing messages about helping us out on Patreon and following us on all of our wonderful social media, and we will talk to you next time.
Thank you for listening. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter at GreggHoush Show and on Instagram at GreggHoush. If you like what you've heard and want to be a part of it, check out patreon.com/GreggHoush Show. In exchange for funding our programming, you gain access to exclusive content such as uncut editions of our podcast. We have new episodes every Thursday night. We hope you listen in. The GreggHoush Show was created by GreggHoush, executive produced by co-host Derek Gowrays, and co-hosted by Kayla Avery. Other contributors include producer and writer Anna Jeffrey, co-host producer David McGuffin, and writer-engineer Robert Tortora. Theme music for this show was produced and recorded by Geneva de Colbert. Our interns include co-host Casey McLaughlin, writer-engineer Alec Greeny, writer Maddie Locicero, and associate producer, writer, and announcer William Kennedy. You're listening to New Revolutionary Radio, your call to action.